So I want to show you how to create loop and assignment flows for beginners. I'm Dirk. I'm a Salesforce admin working in Washington, D.C. And as you can see right there, I love to talk about flows. So please reach out to me on LinkedIn or just reply to me in the video, and I'd love to get your feedback, and I'd love to answer any questions you might have or work with you to try to troubleshoot any tricky flows you might have. And so our goals are twofold. We're going to create flows, and we want to look up record IDs and assign them to variables. And I feel like record IDs are the most important thing you can learn about creating flows. While you can do a lot with screen flows without ever using a record ID, this lets you handle more complex business cases. So when do you use a loop? And there are many more reasons for this, but here are three that I came up with that I think are pretty significant. First, when you want to update multiple child objects using details from a parent. So when the address is added to a household account, the address field will be updated on all related contacts who don't have an address. That's a great example of it. When you want to change a parent object to trigger multiple changes in child objects. So when account changes its record type to client, all the related contacts will also have their record type changed to, oh, I see that should have said client, it says customer right there. Or when you want an action to fire based on a change to a parent. So, for example, an email might be sent to all contacts that is connected to an opportunity when the opportunity status is updated. So let's talk about the scenario that this flow is created for. Our organization created the position of an auditor to look over all cases that are potential liabilities to see if we can improve our processes. And all cases meeting these criteria need to get assigned to that auditor. Supervisors should be able to distinguish cases under audit. So this is the scenario we're working through, and here's how we're going to address that problem with a flow. We're going to make a loop, and it's going to assign cases to a user based on their title, in this case auditor, and also update the cases with a checkbox so the supervisors can tell them apart. I'm going to briefly demonstrate what this flow will do. So I'm going to create a new user, and let's call them Charles Auditor. Because we're going to use the Salesforce license, they're going to be handling cases. And then I'm going to go real quick to just standard user. Let's make them a flow user and a service cloud user because they will be doing support work. And the other thing, and the most important thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give them the title of auditor. And what we're going to see already is that a number of my cases have already been assigned to CAudit. That's Charles Auditor, who we just made. So we can see under their details they've had under audit placed on them, and they're under audit because they're potential liabilities. So how did we do that? Well, I'm going to show you with this flow. Now to follow along, you're going to have to do two things, and I won't demonstrate these, but I'll demonstrate everything else step by step. Please create a user with the title auditor. You don't need to use the same information that I did right here, but you should make them a Service Cloud user, and you should give them the title auditor. The other thing you're going to have to do is you're going to need to go on the Cases object and create a checkbox. Name the checkbox under Audit, and make sure you gave yourself access to edit it. If you didn't give yourself access to edit it, the flow will not work. Okay, once you've done that, then we can start making the flow. So our next step is we're going to go and we're going to create a user. And this is a very new hands-on org that I just spun up. You can see it's even giving me the prompts and walkthrough tips. It thinks I'm entirely new. And so I'm going to hit new. And I'm going to search flows up here. And I'm going to select a new flow. And we're going to make this a record trigger flow. And the object we're going to use is going to be user, because this is going to fire when there's a change to the user, as you saw in the demo video. So I'm going to make this when a record is created or updated. And I did that for a reason. I want to make this more realistic. We could imagine This is a case where somebody previously didn't have the job title of auditor and just got that job. I'm going to add some logic. I'm going to say all conditions are met. And in this case, it is going to be title equals auditor. And we can see this, and we should probably select only when a record is updated to meet the condition requirements. If we selected every time a record is updated and meets the requirements, then if any change happened to this person, for example, their email address changed, then this flow would fire again. And that just creates useless API calls. So we want to make sure that we're only having it activate when it matters. I'm going to hit done over here. I'm going to add a get record element right over here, and this will just get records that match certain conditions. And so I'm going to select get liabilities. And so basically this is looking for cases that are potential liabilities for our organization. So I'm going to do case, and then I'm going to look for a liability, potential liability, and I'm going to do yes. The other thing we want to do, so this seems pretty straightforward. So you're just getting a case that is a liability. But what we want to do is we want to go down here and select all records. This will get every case that happens to be a liability. You can only do a loop flow if you have what they call a collection variable when you have collected multiple records. And so we're going to hit done. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create our loop. I'm going to call this something like loop through cases. I'm going to click right there, and I'm going to select get liability. I'm going to hit done. And because it's always good to save periodically, let's save. I'm going to call this auditor flow. Hit save. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to debug. And we're going to do this just as if I was created at that moment. And what we'll see right here is it seems like not much has happened, but already quite a bit has happened. What this shows us is we successfully found records, right? So there was something. There were records that met those criteria. And then there's loop, and it loops through each one of these cases. Now, I want to talk a little about what these are, because these are record IDs. And while you may be familiar with this, and if you are, please feel free to skip ahead, I want to spend just a little time talking about this. Every Salesforce record has what they call a record ID. Let's go with the closed cases. I'm going to click on this one, and up in the corner right here, you can see right after case, there's that series of letters and numbers, and that is its record ID. And in fact, if I go back to here, and I copy and paste one of these things, paste it right in here, and it's going to bring it right in there. And we can see, we already see that checkbox we made, but one thing we do see is this is a potential liability, which is great. So we can tell it's actually looking up the things we are looking for, which is, I mean, I know for me that's quite exciting. All right, now let's continue working on this flow. We're going to go back and we're going to hit Edit Flow. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go to Assignment. What an assignment object will do is it will update one of those record IDs. So it's going to create an update that only exists within the little world of the loop. And so what we've got to do is we have to make those changes within this world of the loop and then make them permanent. And you'll see how we do that. So I'm going to say, call this check box and assign, because that's the two things we want to do. And so let's give a description. This will check the under audit box and assign this to the assign. this record to the auditor. And when I pick my variable, I'm going to go for current item from loop through cases. And so this is basically one of those records in the collection. And I will say, if you aren't seeing this right now, make sure you collected all the objects that match that criteria and created a collection, record collection, rather than just collecting a single object. So, and under loop through cases, I'm going to find under audit, and you'll see it's got that right there. So it's loop through cases dot under audit equals, and then we're going to pick global constant true, because you see it says equivalent to true, checked, or yes. And the next thing we're going to do is where it says add assignment right here. I'm going to go to that same thing, and I'm going to go to owner ID, I'm going to make that equal to record dot ID. So we click on that. And so what this does is this points at that user we just made. Let's go back to them. And so we're going to see when we look up here that, and it might be a little hard to see the user ID. There's a lot of stuff right there, but we can see the 2F, and we can ignore the 2F. That's always just the lead part of that. That's going to be their record ID right there. I'm going to save and debug so we can see the next step. And when we run through it, we're going to see quite a bit has happened. We're going to see that under audit is now equal to true, and keep a look at that record ID right there, and we see the capital OAAZ. And then if we look over here, capital OAAZ, it does the same thing. So it just handed off that record. Now, I'd love to say that we're done, but unfortunately we aren't yet, because our next step is, right now, like I said, we changed things, but we just changed things within the world of the loop. So now we got to take our steps to make it real. So I'm going to hit Edit Flow one more time. Hit Add. And then I'm going to create another assignment variable. We're going to take that record we had, and we're actually going to add it to a new collection. So let's just call it that, add to new collection. Where it says variable, we're going to make a new resource. We're going to select variable, and let's call this case collector. And no surprise, this is going to be a record because we're collecting cases, which are records, and it's going to be cases. And see where it says allow multiple values collection, we need to do this. We're going to make this a collection, just like we started the process with. We started with a collection, we're going to end with a collection. You hit done. And right now, this is an empty collection variable. So think of this like a bag or a box that you can just stuff in. Stuff in. Hard to say, right? I'm going to hit add. And then where add works, I'm going to take the current item, get rid of that period, and it is important to get rid of that period. Sometimes you'll see some red text yelling at you if you get rid of that period. I don't know why it is, but sometimes it'll act a little funny about it, but don't worry about it. You'll see it takes it just fine, and we're going to hit done. We're going to hit save and debug one more time. You'll see I'm doing this a lot because I want you to see every step along the way. And I do this when I'm making my own flow just to make sure that I'm not spending a lot of time on a project that isn't quite working. And so you see we've got quite a few records right there in our collection. Now you see we took that first one, we updated it to true. Now let's add it to a new collection, right? So that's part of this new collection. And that isn't just any case, but that's the new updated version of that case. And if we go down, again, we see now there's two cases in there. So basically, we ran through these old ones, And by the end, if we scroll way down here, we can see that basically all the cases that we had in their new updated version got added to this new collection. Now we're not done yet because this isn't, for lack of a better word, reality. Right now we're just changing things within the loop and we've updated a variable, but we haven't updated the real case itself. So we're going to hit Edit Flow. I'm going to go down to Add Element. You can get Update Records. I'm going to do Update Cases. And then you'll see there's a number of options. And you see it says either use the record that triggered that flow. We don't want to do that because that's just the user, the person who's there. And we want to update the cases and give them to that person. And we don't want to update records related to the user record that triggered the flow because, among other things, these records aren't related to them yet, right? They're gonna be, but they're not related yet. And so we're gonna say use all the IDs and field values from a record or record collection. And we'll see a couple of options. And we want get liabilities was our old record collection variable. And now we got our new one, case collector. I'm gonna hit done. And now let's save and debug. Y'all are gonna be sick of saving and debugging after this is all done. Hit run. And we're going to see at the bottom, now you can see the owner ID is new. Remember that OAAZ. And then you see all the cases. And they have very similar names. So it may be a little confusing at first, but you'll see this one's FL, FP, FS, FU, FV, FZ. Those are all the various IDs for all the cases in there. And then you'll see under audits now true. Now let's activate this and see if it actually works. So I'm going to go to my users, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do just a little bit of a trick. I'm going to hit Edit. And remember, this will fire when things are created or updated. So let's update them real quick. Let's call them Manager of Accounting, perhaps. Save. And now I'm going to edit it again and make them into the auditor. And because it's been updated, it meets those criteria, I'm going to hit save. And if I did everything correctly, it should look very similar to things were in that video. I'm going to refresh this page. And you see that case is now under Dirk Auditor, and it's under audit. And this will happen for every case that meets those requirements. We could go through them and see them all. Thanks so much for your time, and please reach out if you have any questions or any ideas, and look forward to seeing you out on there on LinkedIn or in the Salesforce communities. Have a great day.